now available in paperback and e-readers, E-Steam Ascension, The Devil is Evil reaches a turning point in the life of this powerful E-Steam series story. Get E-Steam Ascension at online booksellers today. In the Bible, it clearly states that those who knew and didn't say anything will be beaten with more stripes. And the person who I believe will be beaten with the most stripes is this black pastor. Because this black pastor, as a so-called man of God, knew what was in the Word of God, but made absolutely no efforts to teach many of these black females that go to his church every Sunday. And when it comes down to this black pastor, the reason why he's going to be beaten with the most stripes again is because this black pastor knew what was in the Word of God, and instead of trying to teach those black women in the church about what was in the Word of God, he decided to create his own religion and use that religion to manipulate those black women and lead them astray. Now, in the Bible, it clearly states that in the Old Testament that the first commandment is, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." And in the New Testament, Jesus, in his own commandments as the first two, the only two, he states that you are supposed to love the Lord with all thy heart, all thy soul, and all thy spirit. And the second commandment, he stated, is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And it's clear to me that your black pastor has violated both of the commandments of the Son of God, who tells us to love the Lord with all thy heart, all thy soul, and all thy spirit, and to love thy neighbor as thyself, because he refuses to teach the Word of God to these black women in many of these churches. No, he lets these black women go on believing in things like feminism and makes no effort to correct those women, because over the last 50 years, your black pastor knew that feminism was wrong, and he knew that the feminist movement was wrong. But instead of him getting in the pulpit and telling those black women the truth, instead he decided to remain silent and just not preach and tell these black women about the natural role of the man and the natural role of the woman, and how feminism runs counter to what many of the tenets of the Word of God are all about. And because he was silent on that, this is why he will be beaten with more stripes by the living God. Because he knew better, but he did not say anything to many of these black women in these communities who are supposed to be so strong and independent and are doing whatever they want Monday through Saturday, but then go into these churches on Sunday praising God. And the reason why they are participating in this behavior is due to the silence of this black pastor. Now, when it comes down to this black pastor, we clearly see that he does not put God first in his life. And because he does not put God first in his life, what he does is he remains silent on many things that are detrimental to many of these black women out here. And because he will not preach to those black women and tell them that they are living a sinful life, what he is doing is, like those Pharisees and Sadducees, sending those women on the road to hell. And the reason why he's doing that again is because he cares more about the pleasures of this life than helping these women find the gift of salvation and finding a way to enter the kingdom through Jesus Christ. He's not concerned with these women's eternal souls. All he's concerned with is making money here on earth. And that's why your black pastor is no different than your Pharisees or your Sadducees. He's more concerned with serving these white people in America and these corporate interests and these Democrats than he is concerned with the next life and the kingdom. Because you would think, again, a man who's supposed to be a pastor, supposed to be a righteous man, would be concerned with things as related to the kingdom. But no, your black pastor isn't concerned about those things. He's more concerned with making money off of the black woman and keeping the tithes in his pocket than concerned with this woman's eternal soul. Because again, if he was so concerned with this black woman's eternal soul back in the 60s and the 70s, he would have been preaching hard against this feminism, and he would have told those black women that when it comes down to the woman, her natural role is to be the helpmeet and support to the man, and she is supposed to submit to the man and the man's authority. That is God's natural order, and that is how God created things to be. That was what a man who follows God would say to these women, and he would tell those women that this is the natural order as ordained by God. He would not sit there and passively be quiet and then let things go by and then let his community fall completely apart, because he would be more concerned with being accountable to God than being accountable to men. But we clearly see who the pastor is loyal to and what God the pastor truly serves. And because the pastor serves the white man as his God, he leads the black woman to follow the white man. And that's why your community is in the sad state of affairs that it's in, because the black community is not following the living God. It is following the black pastor who worships the white man and follows the white man, because we clearly see that the white man is the God he has before the living God, and that's the God he serves, just like this black woman serves that white man. And the reason why she continues to serve that white man is because this pastor, who knows the Word of God, refuses to preach to her the Word of God. Because anyone who has read the Word of God knows that God is not a man and God does not lie. And because God is not a man, he is not bound to follow these men out here the way this black pastor follows these men. When it comes down to these black pastors are going to be punished by the living God, because when it comes down to the black pastor knew what he had to say in order to teach these women right, but he did not choose to do that intentionally. And there's malice of forethought in that, because your black pastor, again, he knew what was in that Bible, he knew what was in the Word of God, but he never made a single effort to teach that to all those black women who became these single mothers and created this welfare state with the Democratic Party. But he didn't say a single word about it because, again, he was just as complicit, because he wanted to get that 10% off the top of those black women's welfare checks or the jobs they got through affirmative action. He wanted to make that money off the top rather than try to maintain a black community that was functional. And that's what's really egregious about these black pastors, is that they, again, knew what was in the Word of God, knew what the standard of God was, but instead of following the standard of the living God, they decided to follow the standard of the white man, and they made the white man the God before the black community and supported him being the God of the black community overall for the last 50 years. And because he did that, that's why he will be beaten with more stripes by the living God for his behavior. Because this black pastor knew what was in that Bible and never preached that to any of those black women. And because those black women were never preached that, that's why they've gone wayward like they have. And that's why this black pastor is one of the most reprehensible people in the black community. Because this black pastor could have easily went into that Bible and went to the Corinthians and preached to many of those black women about fornication, and he could have stopped many of those black women from becoming single mothers from the beginning. And he could have easily gone into his Bible and spoke against feminism and the whole idea of black women joining the feminist movement by talking about the role of the woman in Genesis, but he didn't decide to preach that sermon at all. And he could have also preached against all these women participating in all of this out of wedlock sex by going right into the Corinthians yet again and talking about how the wife is supposed to submit to the husband. And he could have also talked about how Jesus talked about how it's supposed to be one man and one wife. He could have easily went into his Bible the way I'm talking about this Bible right now, but your black pastor, who was in these churches every Sunday making all these sermons, never once went to these black women and preached that Word of God, because he wanted to get that 10% off the top. And when he gets into the afterlife on Judgment Day, he's going to be beaten with more stripes, because when it comes down to this black pastor. This was the individual who, again, was supposed to be the steward of God over the Word of God. He was supposed to be the one preaching the Word of God, but he never went to do this because he was more concerned about the cares of this life than being held accountable in the next life. And because he wasn't concerned with being accountable for his actions to the living God, he is going to be punished by the living God because this pastor, again, knew what he needed to say to black women, and he didn't say it to those black women because he was more concerned with his God, the white man, and making that white man happy. Well, this black pastor clearly shows us what God he serves by his actions because he had the word in his hand and he could have spoken the word to people, but instead of sharing the gospel and the good news of the living God and sharing his word to others, what your black pastor did was take the word and pervert it for his white God. And that shows us, that he truly serves the devil and he will get the reward that the devil and his followers will get at the end of this life. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.